All right, welcome to Shoot Me Straight. Here today with Adam Davis. He reached out to us. He's been on a number of things like Good Morning America and a number of different podcasts. We're going to get to hear his whole story, and he brought his son with him too, which is super cool. He's written a number of books. One that's really famous is Bulletproof Marriage.
Yeah.
Really recommend you guys checking it out. From what I hear, I haven't read it yet, but from what I hear, it's awesome.
Yeah, Bulletproof Marriage was the second book I did after Behind the Badge, which is probably the best-selling book I have, and it's the one that a bunch of publishers said, nobody's going to buy this. Nobody wants to buy books for cops. And it outsells everything else combined. It's really cool. And so Behind the Badge is 365 devotions for law enforcement. Bulletproof Marriage has done very well. But what's really cool is the stories you hear, the couples that had already set up a date and divorce court. And already scheduled all that, and then somebody says, hey, here's this book you need to go through by Adam Davis and Dave Grossman. You should go through this, and how they're still married today, and they're happy, and they're thriving, and that's really cool. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you know you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
Right? It's that it's reaching other people. But yeah, I'm definitely going to delve into these books. I appreciate you bringing them, giving to them as gifts, man. Seriously.
Thank y'all for having us very much.
What got you to the point of writing those books, like your background and story?
Yeah. So I started writing to replace drinking. And I was drinking a lot. And so I had to start writing a lot. Since December of 15, I've written 6.5 million words. And so obviously I needed to fill the void. And so my story starts really as a little boy. My parents divorced, not uncommon, right? But I was left with a neighbor who was an older male. He wasn't related to us. I always say that. And so it started off pretty normal, right? And the good cartoons where it said, that's all folks at the end, and then the good cereal and all that good stuff. And then one day he popped in a VHS, and it was porn. And it wasn't long after that he started doing to me as a little boy what he was watching on TV.
How old were you at this time?
Around 5.
Oh, wow.
And, I've talked about it all across the country, but when I went to write about it, it was a little different for me because I can talk about it and leave, and I'll never see those people again. But writing about it was a little different. And so I talked to several different publishers, and I told them what happened as a little boy and then again as a teenager in the church. And then when I approached and tell people about it, they wanted to sweep it under the rug. And I was talking to publishers, and a lot of them were like, well, your story's not unique. I'm like, no freaking way. Like, that's the whole point. How many people are talking about it?
Yeah.
Because you don't talk about how it affects you later on because of your perspective of relationships, of faith, of trust, communication, and just how it affects you in a number of ways, how it affects your brain. And so, anyway, I got married at 18. So the one at 15, I was left with a babysitter. I was 15 years old, left with a babysitter. And she was a worship leader in the church, in her 30s, married with children. And so she started start off by making me strawberry daiquiris with Bacardi. And then it turned into a sexual relationship that lasted for like a year. And a lot of buddies, if I would have told them, would have like, high five, bro, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it affects you in so many ways because if I get married 2 years later, that ends when I'm about 16. I get married at 18. If you understand how it affects perspective of relationships, perspective of church, people in the church, leaders in the church, a woman that's standing up in front of the church as a leader, if she would do that, what stops anybody else from doing that?
Where is this all taking place at?
This is back home.
And where's back home?
Dothan.
Okay, so this is in Dothan.
Oh, yeah.
All right, yeah.
And
Alabama.
Dothan, Alabama. And so it ended because I was old enough to drive to a different church, and I had this very, very sexy Geo Metro hatchback, mint green,
balling,
which I could not. Yeah, I was balling. I could not fit in that thing today, but I pulled up at this other church and I locked my keys in my car, and I called my dad and I'm like, "Hey, Dad, I'm in trouble." and I was in trouble in more ways than one. And he came, and as soon as he got there, I jumped in the truck, locked the door. I was like, "Don't get out. I need help." He was like, "Son, I don't like your car. It's no big deal, right?" And I said, "No." And I told him what I told you, what's been going on. And his first move was, "I'm about to kill every mother effer out there."
Well, your dad sounds a lot like me, because that's the first thing I was thinking when you said it.
I'm about to start killing everybody. And he was like, when he calmed down a second, he was like, "I got to protect you." I remember the words that came out of his mouth. "I've got to protect you." And between my dad and my wife, only two people ever fought for me. And I won't mention the other people that you would expect to fight for you. I won't talk about that. But I'll tell you that it had a profound impact on me, and I kept church at an arm's length for a very, very long time.
I don't doubt it.
Because if that happens in a small country church, it's happening in a lot of places.
How long? So this first happened when you were 5. How long did that persist for?
It was more than once. It was more than several times. I don't remember exactly. I can tell you the color of the room was like a blue, like a baby blue. It had some nasty carpet, had a console TV and a VCR on top. I remember some of the scenes from the porn films that he would play and some of the things he would say at different parts of it. And but when I brought it up to certain people, which I won't mention who they were, they defended them. And both times these were people that were friends of that person. And so
would he say stuff like, would he try and mask it or say stuff of like, "Hey, you can't tell anyone if you do"?
Oh, yeah, he said, "If you tell anybody what happened, I'll kill you." And he was next door.
Yeah.
And a lot bigger than me at the time. I was just a fat, chubby kid. And so as I grew up into be a man and eventually a law enforcement officer, I've looked back at this stuff, and it's really pissed me off thinking about it, because I see what he robbed me of. I see what he took from me. A normal childhood, right? I became very isolated, withdrawn. I became very awkward. My dad has never done anything to hurt me. The only thing he ever did physically to me was tear my ass up when I needed it.
Sure.
And I deserved it, but it made me a better person. But I still wouldn't want to hug my dad. And it had nothing to do with him. It was because of what this other dude had done, this evil pedophile. And they still walk free today.
Yeah.
And which is fine. Everything will come to them that needs to. It took me a long time to address forgiveness. And my oldest son is in the room today, which is really cool to have him here. But about 2 months before he was born, I was standing outside of the house we were in at the time. And like before your first child is born, you do a lot of digging. Like, am I ready for this? This is really scary. Like, how am I going to do this? There's not a manual on how to be a dad, right? But I knew something was off in me. And it was pure hate at a very deep level. I had gotten to the point to where I wanted to kill everybody that was involved because of what they'd done for me. What did I have to lose? And so I began to think, I've got to do something because I want to be here for my son, and I want to be a good dad. And I started a process of forgiveness, and it's not really complex. God says that, His word, He is faithful. And His word commands us to forgive. And that's really hard to do. The hardest person I've ever had to forgive was the one in the mirror, not the people who hurt me. And really forgive myself for carrying it so long and for not addressing it earlier. It took me 20-something years to deal with the one that I was a little boy. And then
Did you try addressing it earlier, did you tell people, or were you just fearful that he was going to come over and kill you?
I was genuinely afraid to my core. Like, as a little boy, after all that crap happened, they would take me to psychiatrists because I couldn't control my bowels. And so they thought that I was just doing that on purpose. I developed a speech impediment, which every once in a while you'll hear if you listen for it. But they took me to speech therapists, and they didn't understand why this stuff was happening. And but nobody could pick up, not the doctors, nobody. You know, it was a mixture between a great deal of fear at an early age, and then guilt and shame at a level that a lot of people never address. And maybe your guilt and shame is because of stuff you've done. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when it's something that's done to you that's horrible that most guys never want to talk about, it affects you. It affects you as a man, and until you deal with it, it's going to continue to affect you and control you. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we got married at 18. September this year will be 23 years. That is not a testament to me. That is a testament to God's faithfulness and the love of a good woman. Mm-hmm. Because she is, if you think I'm strong in any way, you got to meet her. She's the one that holds the rock down. And I just do my part, and she loves me really well. So I'm blessed with my family.
That's amazing.
And that's one of the reasons why I wrote Bulletproof Marriage, because I was like, I'm going to take all my mistakes and I'm going to put them in a book. And like, I've got to be able to help somebody with stuff I've screwed up. You know, if I can learn from it and help others learn from it, then it's worth it. And that's why I tell my story. I've had a lot of people say, bro, you ain't got to tell everything. But you know the number of guys that have walked up to me after the curtains go down with tears running down their face, and they're like, you set me free today. Thank you. That's why I do it. And so there's a lot more to it. You know, we got married at 18, and then our first child came along, Addison, in 04. And then 06, my daughter was born. I was working pest control. I was real sloppy, real thick, real fluffy. You know, I wasn't solid, you know. I was real bad off.
Big bone.
Yeah, big bone. Yeah, corn fed. And so we moved to Auburn for a little bit. And my wife was going to go to pharmacy school. And one day I'm out working, and she calls me, and she's in a panic, man. She's like, oh my God, Addison has eaten all my birth control, and I don't know what to do. The son that's with me here, he ate all the birth control, and she was like freaking out, called poison control 911, everything's good. And she called and she said, they said, well, it's not going to affect him, but it may, you know, if it was a girl, it may affect her. It's not going to hurt. It may hurt his stomach, but it's not going to affect him in any way.
Really?
And yeah. And she said it may affect you, which we found out a short while later that it did, because she was pregnant with our third child. and
maybe so, that was his plan all along. Yeah.
And I'm very blessed. He was a surprise. It wasn't planned. It wasn't expected, but it's a blessing nonetheless. And very, very, very proud to have all three of them. And I was working a side job up there, working for a company near Auburn, and running wreckers, because that's what I grew up doing with my dad, right? Running tow trucks and fixing wrecked cars and being around men. And this guy come up to me one day, and he was like, hey, you want to make a little extra money? And I was like, yeah, what you got? And essentially, he wanted me to haul dope in cars on the back of rollbacks on the flatbeds. And I just said, hey, let me think about it. And then I packed our stuff up, which was coincident because she was pregnant. She was ready to go home. So I sent them home, and I packed my stuff up in a Penske truck by myself, everything in the house, and left in the middle of the night because I didn't want this dude to come after me. And he was later found out, but no relation to what I did. But working in pest control, we moved back home, and I got a job with a smaller company. I was a service manager, like 27 years old. Who would hire me to be a service manager over a group of guys? And the owner's son kept coming in late every day, and it pissed me off. Like, I want you to be on time. That's really easy to do, just be on time. And so I went to the owner, and I'm like, dude, he keeps showing up late every day. What are we going to do? And he said, well, what would you do if he's anybody else? I said, I'd fire him. He said, well, fire him. And so I fired him. And 2 weeks later, they fired me and hired him in my spot. And,
what?
Yeah, they fired him. They fired me, and it happened. And just so happens it was that was, I believe, March of 2009, which was Addison's 5th birthday. And so I remember people being at the house and the balloons and birthday cake and presents and all this stuff, and I had to go, and my wife's pregnant. And she can't work because of pregnancy complications. And I have to go in and tell her that I don't have a job. And I was rapidly dying inside because I hung my hat on being a provider for my family. And I couldn't do anything. I mean, so I resorted to cutting grass and washing cars and cleaning horse stalls and whatever else I could do just to get by, whatever I could do. And I was sitting in a meeting one day over in Luverne, Alabama, near where Sister Schubert's, the roll factory is. And this Marine sat down with me, who was a pastor at the time, and this businessman sat me down, and they said, all right. They lured me in with lunch because I was real fat and they knew I liked to eat. So,
as any good Christian church would do.
And he said, "What do you want to be? Like, what do you want to be?" And I said, I've always felt called to pastor. Like, I've always wanted to be a pastor." And he looked at me dead, like never broke eye contact. He said, "You're a cop out." He said, "You're too afraid to tell me what you want to do. What is it that you want to do?" And I kind of was like, he said some other choice words that I didn't expect from a pastor, but really got my attention. And I looked at him, I said, "I want to be a cop." He said, "Then grow some balls and be a cop." And now when I'm in front of a live crowd, I'll change that up and I'll say, I'm going to use a word that rhymes with this, but we're going to use something else, especially if I'm in a church. And so I did. In September of that year, I raised my right hand and swore the oath and became a law enforcement officer. And they got me to where, I was a really sloppy, almost 300 pounds to running 10 miles a day. And I lost about 60 pounds, but I was not strong. I was just getting skinny.
Yeah.
And that was the best decision I ever made, was going into law enforcement. And I miss it to this day, but it's been a pretty cool journey and learned a lot through law enforcement. Got a lot of stories, no war stories, but I got some pretty cool stories.
What year did you become a law enforcement officer?
2009.
2009. Okay.
During that time that you had your son's 5th birthday, you lost your job, you're like, man, I'm failing as a provider, feeling like you're failing as a provider. I mean, you look back now and you're like, it's all going to work out. But at that time, it's like, did the abuse and all that stuff creep up where you were like, I mean, there's triggers along the way, especially if it's undealt trauma. Mm-hmm. It's like 5th birthday of your son, 5th birthday is when you were sexually assaulted or you were molested.
Yeah.
And it's like, through that time, did that like ruminate?
Yes, it's crept up, but it doesn't just show up like this is what happened. Mm-hmm. It shows up in different emotions.
Yeah.
Or different seasons of the year. Like fall is now my most favorite season of the year, but it used to be the time that I would just sink because it reminded me of certain stuff that happened. And I can't tell you why. I would just start going into these thought loops and emotional just down spirals, and now I understand why. And I went through trauma therapy and EMDR for the first time in my entire life back in 21, mm-hmm. and it had a profound impact on me. It helped me a lot. But I think the greatest point, or the greatest turning point, really, and it's taken me years to understand this and kind of break it down, was there was a hostage deal in Dale County, Alabama, just north of where we live. And I can't remember what year it was, 11 or 13, I can't remember. Anyway, this dude goes into a school bus, pulls a gun, or tells the bus driver, "Hey, I need a kid off the bus." And the guy was like, "You're not getting any of our kids." Charles Poland was the bus driver. I'm not going to say the name of the piece of trash that killed him, but he said, "I'm not giving you a kid." So he pulls out a gun, shoots and kills him in front of a bus full of kids. This is all on TV, on the video from the bus. He grabs the first boy off the bus, who was 5-year-old Ethan. He was blonde hair and blue eyes, and took him into an underground bunker that he had prepared. I was not an agent in charge. I was not in charge of anything. I was not a hero. I did not do anything special. I was essentially a scribe. I monitored behavior on a video that SWAT dropped in the form of a phone, and we had audio and video, and I sat and watched, and I took notes, and I would relay it. That's all I did. But in the process of watching this video, my lieutenant, my commander, called me off about halfway through the deal. It lasted about a week. And she was like, hey, I think you're getting too attached to this kid. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, she started to see something that I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm good. And so I'm sitting here making notes. What happened for me was, and it's taken me years to understand this, I saw how all these other evil pieces of trash had kept me hostage to what they did to me as a kid. And then the people who were supposed to fight for me, who didn't fight for me, condoned it and stayed friends with these people, and how that affected me and how it had kept me a prisoner for so long, and it pissed me off. I'd go home in the middle of the night, wake my kids up, and just hold them in my arms after watching this boy, knowing he's still there. And but they had a good ending. FBI HRT made entry, saved the little boy, killed the bad guy. End of story.
Nice.
And I'll never say his name. You can look it up. You can find it. He doesn't deserve a mention.
Nope.
And neither do some of the other people in my life, and you'll read that in Unconquered. And I'll tell you why. And I don't believe we should mention the names of evil people because they want attention. Don't give them the glory. Give the glory to the heroes. Don't give glory to evil. And don't console evil. Don't negotiate with evil. Destroy it at every chance you get. If that's evil in your heart, destroy it immediately. I was on a downward spiral in my life, drinking all the time. And I don't mean just like, let's have a beer, bro. I should have died on a few occasions from how much I drank, and I'm not bragging about it.
How early did the drinking start?
You mean in the day? Like 11
No, I
a.m.?
mean, like, I'm sorry. Well, at what age?
Like heavy drinking was really when I was a cop.
Okay.
And it wasn't like I went into law enforcement feeling like, hey, I've got my game together. I'm squared away. We're going to church. We were going to a different church, obviously. And I was reading my Bible. I was listening to Christian music. I was like, I'm squared away. And then I get on night shift, and I go to day shift, and then I go to traffic homicide, criminal investigations, get through hostage negotiations, training, all this stuff. And it really wasn't the vehicle deaths. It was the child's rape. It was the suicides. Because I always just felt something different there. It was weird. It was heavy. It was dark. But I felt a lot of rage when it came to children being raped. And so I'd go home and drink. And I drank to the point to where I became emotionally numb. And then I just eventually got to the point where I was sober and completely numb and shut down. I felt nothing. I had no emotion whatsoever. Seared conscience. And so I was trying to find things that would give me a rush so I could feel again. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that could do that was women. And when I tell you that I'm here today and I'm still married because of the love of my wife and God's grace and mercy, there is nothing, like I can't overstate that because I do not deserve what I have. I was an absolute 100% piece of dog shit. And it was because I can blame it on pain. I can blame it on trauma. I can blame it on how it affected my brain. I can blame it on Zoloft. I can blame it on how it affects your prefrontal cortex or decision making or any of this. I own it. I was wrong. And that was the only way I could get a rush. That and a little bit of drinking every once in a while. And then, I mean, it got to the point fights wasn't really getting my heart rate up. I'd call out on a pursuit, and it sounds like I'm reading a bedtime story. And it just wouldn't get me high anymore. It wouldn't give me the rush. And so I went home one afternoon, took off my gear. My wife's at the kitchen island behind me, and she's washing her hands or dishes or something. And I hear the water turn off, and she said, "Hey, babe, how was your day?" And I'm like, I'm staring at a blank TV. I've got no feeling whatsoever. Very selfish, very hard and cold, and I was just like, fine. Dude had blew his head off with a 12-gauge shotgun. There had been a crime involving a child on top of admin, politics, and all the bull crap that you have to get through. And it took everything I had just to get home. like mentally. And I did not want to go through it again. So I should have, in hindsight, I should have said, hey, sweetheart, I've had a really rough day. Can we do this later? Instead of being a prick and saying, fine, you know, and shutting down and isolating and withdrawing. And that's what I did. And so that turned into an argument. And it was one that, like, it was just tipping point, in which there's been a study that shows that I think it was 45 to 70% of suicides are tied to a failed relationship of some sort. And I can see why, because a lot of times when that happens, it's not at a prime opportunity. You know, you're not on the high of your life. Things are already bad. And I was there, man. I was in a bad spot. And so I packed up, left, went and stayed in a portable office building, like one of those little metal buildings. Had a cot, had a bathroom, heat, air, whatever. And I had a real bad case of victim mentality, because I started looking over my life. Like, everything bad happens, it happens to me, and how I responded to stuff. I was a victim in my head. And on a Sunday morning, I went to work. It was an overtime detail. I was going to go, and it was traffic enforcement or something. And I put my uniform on, got in my car, did my job, pulled into a parking lot of a gas station just outside the circle on South Oaks, 231 South. Backed into the building, parked, and pulled my sidearm out, laid it on my thigh, and stopped. And it was the pause that was probably the greatest miracle of my entire life. Because as growing up going to church like 13 days a week, I had been to a lot of different services, but what happened in the car that day was different from anything I'd ever experienced. I was tired, like down to my soul. I was tired of fighting. I was tired of hurting. I was tired of feeling defeated. And I had this victim mentality, man, where I felt like everybody would be better off if I wasn't here. And I would have been better off had I never been born. And I know that that was a weak mentality. That's where I was at. But I was ready to end it. So I like hollered at God. And I'm not going to do it because I don't want to tear up your mic. But I was like, hey, I don't know where you're at. I don't know if you can hear me. But I'm like, if you've got a plan for me, you can have my life. Otherwise, I'm done. I'm out. I'm sick of this. I told you earlier that I've written like 6.5 million words since December 15. I have tried to convey the peace in words that I felt that day in a moment. Like, I don't know how to tell you this without it sounding embellished. I can't put it into words. But I had a peace come over me that was greater than any drug, any alcohol, anything, prescription drug. I've never done an illegal drug, that I've ever felt in my life, period. And if you've ever been, like, hugged by somebody that genuinely loves you, that's got your back, and you know the warmth of that embrace, multiply that, like amplify that, like times 1,000. And I could, like, I can't tell you what happened, but I believe with all of my heart and soul that I had an encounter with a living God. That was the power of his Holy Spirit that met me at a place of complete surrender. I'm no longer going to try to carry any of this on my own. Could I fight back a different way? Yeah. Would I be justified? Probably. But the way I'm going is not working anymore. Jesus said, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. He also said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And I was trying to take it on myself. And I think a lot of us try to do that in different ways. Whether we're numbing ourselves by playing video games. I've never understood why a dude would turn his wife down for sex for a video game. But I've heard stories of it, and it's like mind-boggling. But numbing yourself with hours and hours of video games or drugs or pills or alcohol or whatever, it doesn't matter if it's porn, if it's running around on your wife, whatever it is, there is nothing in this world that can give you peace aside from what Jesus can give you. Period. Ever. End of story. I called out on God, and nobody showed up but Jesus. And I have a great deal of debt that I owe him, and that's the rest of my life. And I always thought as a cop, man, that when I started and I was listening to Christian music and I was reading my Bible and I was doing my devotion, I was like, man, this is going to make me weak. It's going to make me passive. It's going to make me be like, when I come across a crook, it's going to be like, hey, bud, I know you're having a bad day. God bless, have a good time. But it didn't. It made me stronger. Faith doesn't make you weak. It makes you unbeatable. And when you have your faith in the right source, it makes you unbeatable. And so I'm here today because of a man named Jesus.
Come on.
And, there's no other answer for it. That's just as real as it gets. I know that's not real popular in the world we're in today. It pisses a lot of people off.
Good.
But that's the truth. That's the fact. That's the way it is. I'm not perfect. I'm utterly wretched. But it's because of his righteousness that makes me any good in me. It is all because of him. And that's the message that I have for the world. It doesn't matter how hurt you are, how wounded, how broken you feel, how bad you've been, or how bad things have been done to you. There's hope.
Amen. That is that's heavy.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a heavy story. That's just, and the redemption and everything is, it's awesome. The way that you put it out into your own words and just the way you were telling the story now. I can relate to everything that you're saying. Yeah.
No doubt.
I relate 1,000% because it happened to me similar on one day, right? And when you were starting to talk about just your encounter with the living God there in your car with the pistol on your lap, like in a day for me, it was, he showed up.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking one of the first things I thought was, holy shit, he's actually real. Yeah. He's actually real.
There's like an element of fear that happens when you
I
feel
was
that.
Scared to death because I knew what side I was on, so. And I thought I was a Christian before that, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I did not know him.
Yeah.
I knew about him,
but
I didn't know him until that day.
I think the thing that's really important is God can touch you wherever you are. But we still, like that day when that happened to me, I had a responsibility and an obligation to do something with it. And the first thing I had to do was go find my wife and pray to God that she would have mercy and that she could see what was happening. And so I found her, and I was like, you got to know what just happened. I tried to kill myself, but don't worry about that. I'm good now. But check this out. Listen.
What?
But something happened, And so, I grew up when one of my parents remarried. She married a Pentecostal preacher, and we were in church, like I said, 13 days a week, man. Nothing has ever encountered me like this. I've been to services all over the place. This was the realest I've ever experienced.
Yep.
And it wasn't at a church at an altar. That's what I'm telling you. It doesn't matter if you're in the front of the patrol car, in the back of it, in a foxhole, in a gunfight. It doesn't matter. You could have peace. Peace beyond anything we could talk about.
Yeah. I've told this story on the podcast before. I found it in a prison cell,
Oh, yeah.
It's like you said, he can touch you anywhere. And, it's beyond amazing.
For some of us, it takes
us being thrown into a prison cell because we're stubborn. But I've tried to explain exactly the same feeling that you're like. There's no words can describe it.
Yeah.
Right. You can, like you said, you've written millions of words and none of it does it justice. Right. Of like the feeling that you felt that day, And I try to explain that to people because, I have a lot of friends who, including myself. When you get out, it's a very difficult time, transitioning out of the military, especially after, decades of war and everything. It's the same stress levels, I'm sure, as it is being a law enforcement officer. But the thing with you guys is you're going home after you see it. Like, we're on deployment, so I don't have to go home and face my wife and kids until after that deployment. Now, after the 6 or 7 months, you do it. You get home and all that stuff unravels a little bit, and you got to learn to deal with it. And I spent most of my career, actually all of it, dealing with it myself. Same thing, drinking, finding ways to numb it, pills. It's what whatever the doctors give you in the military. It's like, oh, here you go. Just keep. All they want you to do is just keep going.
Yeah.
They're like, we just need to keep you running. And in reality, you are going downhill. So yeah, I mean, that day in the prison cell, like the way I try to explain it to people is, I mean, because I've also done tons of treatments after I got out. Like, I mean, I've done psychedelics, 5-MeO DMT, which is a lot of vets are doing that. And, and the big thing I hear from guys coming out of that, they're like, oh, there is something else. Like I felt this love or whatever, But to me, I'm like, dude, that's the drug.
Yeah.
I'm like, the drug is making you feel that way. And I did it too. And I'm like, yeah, it felt amazing. You're like, there is love in this world. But I'm like, that feeling has nothing compared to what I felt. And I try to like tell people, I'm like, have you ever, growing up, there's times in our lives where, you do something wrong and you're like, oh, I'm about to get it. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. You're like, oh, I'm about to get my ass kicked, or I'm about to get, yelled at for this, or my wife, she's going to come down on me for what I did. And that person shows you mercy at the time, right? They're like, it's okay. And you have like that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm like that. It's that times a trillion.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, dude, I am loved no matter what. Oh. So.
Yeah. And I can remember on multiple occasions in law enforcement, like I thoroughly believed like I was going to be a cop the rest of my life. That's what I thought when I went in. That was my goal. But this is where I met the real Jesus, not the one that they paint him to be. Like me and you can believe differently, but he calls us to love each other regardless. But love also drives good men and good women to confront evil. And that's why we fight. That's why we push back against darkness, is because of love. And it's not for you to sit in comfort on a pew in your church and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why I believe with all my heart we're in the shape we're in today, is because good men and women have done nothing. And there's a small segment that do a lot.
Well, everybody's passive.
Very passive.
Yeah.
Very passive.
And that's sort of like the way it's been in the church. Mm-hmm. It's like you said, I go 13 days a week. I read my Bible. I, do the things like the checklist almost. Like I'm doing all these things, so I should be good. And I know Jesus is probably like, okay, that's great. Mm-hmm. But what are you doing? Like, what are you doing to like make this world a better place? Like, what are you doing to fight for others? Yeah, your life is fine. You can sit there and act passive, but why aren't you stepping up and helping others that are in a way worse spot than you? Yeah. And that takes fighting. Like what he wants you to do is get up and fight.
Yeah.
And I think that's been like sort of sucked out of the church, especially with the men in the church.
Yeah.
I truly believe, like you said, like women, like strong Christian women are a million times stronger than Christian men.
Oh, yeah.
That's at least of what I've seen, right? And I can use my wife as an example, right? They're not scared to stand up and say what they believe in and keep us in line.
I know my wife.
Yeah, I deal with the same thing. But I think as men, they're like, oh well, if I get up and say something, then that might, get into confrontation, and then if I get into a confrontation, then that might lead to some physicality, and I don't want to go there because I'm weak physically, or
I'm
this
afraid
or that.
I'm going to do something bad.
Yeah, I'm going to do something bad, or something bad's going to happen to me. And it's like, well, that's the risk you take when you get up and fight for what you believe in. But at least at the end of the day, whether you get your ass kicked or you win, you can say, hey, at least I stood up and did something.
That's right.
Right? And I think that has been taken out. And it, like you said, there are the few that are standing up and doing the right thing, like yourself, like going around telling your story, telling what happened to you, telling the hardships that you went through. I mean, that's not easy either. That's, and like you said, it's not unique, right? Because this is happening to all sorts of other people around the world, or in this country, around the world. But what is unique is you standing up and telling it like it is. Like, dude, this happened to me. This is how bad off I was. This is how I got through it. and you wrote guidebooks for people, right? It's like, here you go.
Yeah. And I remember what it felt like, and I feel like that there's probably millions of men and women. I don't want to exclude them because there's a lot of them that feel the same way, that go to church on Sundays and they sit in the pews or the chairs or whatever, and deep inside their heart and soul, they feel defeated.
Mm-hmm.
But we sing the beautiful songs, we hear the good sermons, and we don't do anything with it. Faith without works is dead. You can have faith all day, but if you don't do something with it, and maybe that something is just prayer and knowing how to pray. And so I put together this 90 days of prayer that we're launching September 1. We're covering every hour of the day for 90 days. And it's got we got a strategy, we got the topics. We need enough people to cover 90 days around the clock, because you can pray. If you can't suit up and go fight and do something, if you can't be a voice in town square for cops when they're in your community saying defund police or whatever bullcrap they're trying to throw, you can pray. And then through prayer, maybe God will give you other actions or next steps that you need to take. But there's something that every single person in this country can do right now. And if you can do nothing more than pray, then that makes you the strongest person in your community. Do it.
Yep.
And so, but I feel like I was talking to I was just on an interview earlier this week in San Antonio, and the guy was like, well, what can people pray for in their communities? And we're talking about law enforcement. I said, you can pray for good men and women to answer the call, because there's a lot of agencies that are struggling with recruitment and retention right now.
Yep.
And so we can pray for good men and women to answer the call. I got up on a Sunday morning. I served about 6 years, a little over 6 years. I got up on a Sunday morning. I was putting my gear on. I'd put my vest on. I was putting my shirt on, button it up at about 5:15 in the morning. And the same still small voice that had whispered on several occasions, it said, there's nothing you can do to change my love for you. There's nothing you can do to change my love for you. Even the night that I was going to meet somebody, a woman that wasn't my wife, the little voice that whispered, everything that's done in the darkness will be revealed in light. And I still went because I'm an idiot. I was. This day whispered and said, today's the day. And I knew exactly what it meant. It was time. And I had written a book and self-published it. It was pitiful. Don't look it up. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. But it opened the door for a lot of opportunities. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And so you look at the fruit of change. We can talk about change all day. We can talk about faith all day. We can talk about love all day. But if it's not shown, if it's not demonstrated and exercised, it's useless. And there's going to come a day, we can talk about the love of Jesus all day, but there's going to come a day when we stand before a judge. And God help you if you haven't done the right things, because we will all be held accountable. And I know that there's a lot that I'll be held accountable for, but for the blood of Jesus that covers all of it. And he is our great defender. He is the one that stands before the judge, where the accuser of the brethren, our enemy, is trying to say, look what Adam's done. Look what David's done. Look what Eddie's done. But Jesus stands up and says, no, I've covered that. Yep. That's been paid for. He's been redeemed fully. And so when you stand before the judge, I hope that you've been covered by Jesus, because that's your only hope.
Yeah, me and Eddie too. Otherwise, that sheet's gonna be like,
oh,
bro, Eddie and Dave.
They got a
really
whole
did this.
They got a whole storage closet for me.
Oh man, Jesus, that's gonna take like a couple ounces
forever.
But yeah, but that's the thing, right? It's
do something with it.
Yeah, do something with it. I mean, and the love that he has for you, it's just like, we all have kids.
Yeah.
The love that you have for your kid. I mean, it doesn't matter what your kid did, right? He could end up, and I'm sure parents have dealt with this, like your kid could, Jeffrey Dahmer, like his dad was probably like, dude, I still love you, right? Like, you are my son. And what you did was insane, but like, I'm sure he still had the same amount of love. I'm sure he was conflicted about it, but that's the love Jesus has for you without any being conflicted at all. Yeah. He's like, no, I still love you, even though you've done all these horrible things.
Yeah. And the love of Jesus does not cause good men who are skilled to be righteously violent, to become weak and passive. I have 3 beautiful children. Everybody in this room that has children knows that we love Jesus. But if you hurt our children, I have no problem digging your blood from under my fingernails. Yep. Period. I will sit and I will fight for my children. I will fight for them. And we have to have a country that stands up and says, you're not going to hurt our children anymore. You're not going to expose them to pure evil anymore. You're not going to do this on our clock. This will not be the generation where our children are taken captive by evil. And one of the reasons why I wrote Unconquered is to help provoke men and women to have courage to face their own pain, to unload the baggage so they can suit up and go fight for what is right.
You mentioned something key there. So when you when I think about guys, men in church, especially in church, like the other weekend there was a porn sermon, right? And I love it now, right? There was years I did not love it because I was secretly looking at porn. And so you're just like, I got to, inside, and there's so many men. I'm like, dude, I know 9 out of 10 guys in here.
Did you see them on your porn videos?
Yeah, probably. I'm like, these guys are looking at it, and you can't be stepping out in courage and stepping out doing. If you got baggage in there that you haven't confessed, that you haven't been honest, the truth will set you free, and you know it, and you know it inside. And so you make it look on the outside like you're doing these good things, but you're dead on the inside. So you become like a Pharisee.
Yeah.
And so it's going, hey, you got to push back the darkness in you first. And by doing that, it's not complicated. It's simple.
Yeah, it is.
And you don't even have to explain it to people. They know. When I came, I think one of the things is when God just blew me up. And there's been times as a believer forward, that I'd secretly look at porn or whatever, and then come out but that day God took precedent over what other people thought about me. So God became bigger than other people's opinions or thoughts or whatever. So I was more concerned with not clogging up this connection I have with the Lord now than I am about what you care about me, what anyone cares. Like, I need to get this out so that I can be clear with him. And God becomes bigger, people become smaller. And right now it's like when I'm in that place that people are bigger than God and I'm more concerned with how it looks or what other people, I'm fearful of, oh man, she's going to be upset or he's going to be upset, then I can't truly step out in courage with God. And inside there's a disconnect.
Yeah, there is. And, I learned from an early age growing up in the church and being around leadership, use that term loosely, how to operate in just ability. And there's a lot of us that are well-trained in our particular skill set that we could still have a really hard day, but we could still do our job. But it's just soul ability. Muscle memory. But there's a difference when you're in tune with a living God, totally surrendered to him, which is where the Unconquered Code, I encourage people, the Unconquered Code, surrender daily. That's where you experience real power. And what does that mean? It means in every moment when you feel tempted, whether it's to lose your temper, whether it's to look at something you shouldn't look at, whether it's to take a second look at something you looked at the first time, whatever it is, to make a conscious decision to do the right thing, And I had 2 dreams right before I left law enforcement, and really weird, but the first dream, and I'm going somewhere, but the first dream I'm laying on a casket. This was after my patrol car experience. I'm laying in a casket, and I can still hear people around me murmuring. I couldn't tell you what they were saying, but I could hear them murmuring and talking amongst themselves. And like it had that traditional funeral chapel smell that all of them smell like. But then there's this like finger snap that sounded like thunder, and this voice said, "Did you do what I created you to do?" And I panicked because I couldn't change anything. And I had so much regret in that moment of what I should have done. And then sometime later, I guess about a month or so later, there was a second one. And this time I was in a casket, but I was being lowered into the ground. And I could hear dirt being thrown on top of the box. And again, that finger snap that sounded like thunder, and this voice said, "Did you do what I created you to do?" I had been in a period where I was, and this sounds awful, interrogating God, not based on his existence, but on the basis of goodness and love. I know that pain can shift our perspective of who he is as a heavenly Father. I know that stuff going on around us can be like, is he really good? And I kept praying, where were you? Where were you when this happened, when I needed you the most? And these words kept coming back. I was with you always. All you had to do was call on me. So maybe today you look around and you can put your right hand over your heart and you feel it beating. You're not in a box. They're not holding a memorial service for you if you're listening to this. You still have an opportunity to show up as a father, as a husband, and do what you're supposed to do. Be engaging, be interactive, lead your family. Lead your family. Many of our homes are struggling, and children are struggling because men are not leading their families. Go home and grab your wife by the hands, be gentle with her, and look her in the eyes and say, I am sorry for not leading you the right way. If you want to see her open up, lead her. If you want to see your children open up, lead them. And how do you lead them? Serve them. Marcus Luttrell told me something that rocked my world. We were at his house. It's been several years ago. And he looked at me, and he was just out of the blue. He had invited me and my whole family out for the week, and we were hanging out. And it was just me and him in his kitchen. And he said, you know, your wife doesn't need a warrior at home, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, lay your gear down at the door and pick up a towel and serve her. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow. Like, we're willing to, like as cops, we're willing to go out and serve complete strangers. People that most of them, well, not most of them, but a lot of them hate us. And we're willing to go and put our life on the line for them. But when we go home, we're not willing to serve anybody. We turn our backs on the people that love us the most. What happens when we serve selflessly? The ones that we said we'll love you until death does us part. And so maybe today you look at where you're at and you're listening to this and you're like, man, I hadn't been the husband I'm supposed to be. I hadn't been the father I'm supposed to be. I hadn't been the man I'm supposed to be. You can change that today. You can change it like right now. And you set yourself a goal that you're going to pray with your wife every day for the next 90 days or the next 30 days or whatever. You're going to read a devotion with her. Bulletproof Marriage is a great way to develop that habit for 90 days. If you will take that little book and you'll initiate that, it's going to rock your marriage. If you'll go home and say, hey, let's go through this together. It'll take like 5-10 minutes maybe. Or any book, just go through the Bible, go through Proverbs or Psalms or Song of Solomon. I mean, do something. Do something. Because you're going to see life come to your marriage and blossom like never before. If you're willing to open up, be vulnerable with your wife. Being vulnerable opens the door for intimacy and levels of intimacy you've never experienced before. And if you haven't been that way, don't expect fruit immediately because it may take time.
Yep. I always bring that to people, especially, when I tell them, to go start going to Christ, or like, hey, you should really start spending time in the Word. It's people that are struggling. But I also tell them, like, when you start doing this and you do it for real, I'm like, just know, like, the devil's going to come at you harder than he's ever come before.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're now going down the right road. And he will throw every roadblock he has to keep you from going down that path. But I was like, as long as you know that ahead of time, then, I mean, I think it's better to prepare people for that than to be like, yeah, go do this and stick with it and everything's going to be fine. It's like, no, everything's not going to be fine. Like, you realize you're going to have to fight through it. And especially you and your wife both, especially if you're doing it together, because he's going to attack her as well in ways that the devil's smart as well too.
Oh, yeah.
He comes in and he'll throw little monkey wrenches in to your life that you're like, you know, where did this come from? And it'll jack you up. But as long as you keep faith and stick to your daily devotionals, your Bible, and talk to Jesus every day, ask him to get you through it, he will.
Yeah. I talk a lot about when I'm mentoring guys, I'll talk to them in his faith, and like you've got to understand that every demon in hell is a believer. They believe, and they know the word. The enemy knows the word better than any of us, which, granted, he's been around a little while longer. What separates us believing and doing nothing from the demons who believe? We're not sold out. We're just passive. We're not surrendered. We're believers. And being a believer doesn't make you anything different. Now, when you surrender, and surrender in the kingdom, everything in the kingdom of God is opposite of this world. Surrender leads to victory in the kingdom of God, whereas surrender in battle in this world leads to defeat. So oftentimes we're opposed subconsciously and consciously to the word surrender, especially as men. I'm not surrendering crap. I'm going to fight to the death. And that's how I was trained as a cop. You never give up. You never quit. You never quit in a fight. But when it comes to your soul, there is one who knows it better than you could ever imagine. Surrender those things to him, and you will find victory. When you surrender it every day intentionally. And what does it mean to give my heart to Jesus? What does it mean to give my heart to God? It means that your mind, your will, your desires, your inner man, that is surrendered to him. I'm giving you every part of me, my ambitions, my desires, my struggles, my temptations, my thoughts, and having a plan in place when those certain stupid thoughts start coming in, that you're going to cut them off and that you're going to go back to God's word, but you can't use God's word as ammo against that stuff unless you know it. And when you know it, then you have something that you can fight back against. I heard a sermon here recently where it talked about the enemy throwing darts, the fiery darts of the enemy. God's word will cut off all of those fiery darts. And I can't remember the scripture. But our God, uses arrows. He has superior weapons. He has superior ammo. And when we choose to surrender to him, we're given everything that we need to fight back against darkness. And we can't just believe. We can't just love. We have to do something with it. And after my experience in a patrol car, I felt like everybody I know needs to know what I just had experience with. Like, if they could experience this in some way, this changes everything. This changes everything. Because the struggles that you've dealt with, the feeling defeated, this and that, once you understand Romans 8:37, you're more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens you. Once you understand John 10:10, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I come that you might have life and life to the fullest. It changes everything. It does not make you passive. It does not make you weak. It makes you unbeatable. And if you want to live a victorious life that's truly unconquered, it's only available through one source, and his name is Jesus. And I'll tell you this. I was sitting in Nashville a few years ago, and this organization said, if you'll remove Jesus, God, and any mention of Scripture, we'll give you, and it was 7 figures. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like baffled, flabbergasted.
Who said this to you?
It was an organization
okay.
I can't mention in Nashville at a Vietnamese restaurant. And I looked at them and I said, and I hadn't sold this to a lot of people. I said, in my 20s, I was bankrupt. Literally, bankrupt. When my wife was pregnant with our third child, I was washing cars, cutting grass, and scooping horse crap. I was on WIC, food stamps, whatever I could do to get by. People would bring us groceries. God was faithful in all of those places. You see, people will sell out because of belief and opinion. But people for thousands of years have died and given their lives freely for their convictions. And I'm not selling out my convictions for any amount of money. Now, would that have been nice to have? Absolutely. But I would not have been able to lay my head down ever because I would have compromised, and I'm not selling out. Not then or now or ever.
That's the devil tempting you right there.
He knew my weakness.
Exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
He'll constantly come in, and it'll start off little things, and then the stronger you get, and it becomes like, oh, hey, here's 7 figures. All you got to do is not mention Jesus.
No.
And it's like, nope.
No.
Not happening.
That million, several million, whatever, that money it truly is not worth that peace.
No.
And everything inside, right? Like, there's not a price on your relationships. There's not a price on how you feel, like, on the inside, having that congruency.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, so when I had that day and came to know God, you talked about, like, hey, everyone's got to experience, like even food tastes different for me. Mm-hmm. Like, everything smelled different. Like, it was the best way. We were talking about how to describe it. The best thing that I can use to describe it is, like, reborn.
Oh, 100%. Like,
be honest.
The sky is brighter again. You know, I wanted to live. That's the best way to put it into words is I wanted to live again. But I didn't want to just live. I had a desire to fight back again. Like, I got my fight back. And you could do that listening to motivational talks all day, but motivation is going to fade away. Mm-hmm. The first time you get punched in the mouth by the enemy, he knows your weakness. And if you have a price, he knows it, and he will meet it. He will meet your price if you have one. You are priceless. You are priceless. And if you understand that you're priceless and there's nothing that he can do to touch that, you need to walk in that, think like it, walk like it, believe it, and live like it. And your family's priceless. At the end of the day, I could go out. I've sold 170,000 books or so. I don't know, not a ton. I could sell millions of books. I could go out and touch millions of lives. But if I neglect what's at home, I've completely failed, And that is the number one goal, is not just for my family, but to encourage every man to lead your family. We could create a movement in this country today if half the men in our country stood up right now and said, no more. No more. We're fighting back. We're going to push back. And you begin to lead your family the right way. Mm-hmm. But you can't if you continue to carry your own baggage.
Yeah.
Come on.
Speaking of that, like how did you, because, I mean, you said you forgave those people when you were little. And to me, I mean, that is a tough ask. Mm. You know, I just thinking about it now, and like I'm in situations in my life as well where I struggle. Like I definitely I can sit there and be like, yes, I forgive them, and then the devil will come back and put thoughts into my head like, yeah, like fuck these people, you know? And I'll sit there and like stir on it. But I realize I'm like, okay, I'm going down this path again. And I was led by the same thing, nothing but anger, rage, vengeance. I was like, that was my prime motivator. And that was my prime motivator for years when I was in the teams. I mean, that's what kept us going back overseas, right? And it's right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't know. But, after I got out, I struggled with that, with the forgiveness part, especially with what happened to my family at the end of my career. And I was like struggling with, and I was like, I need to like move on from this, but it's definitely difficult. And my situation, not to like compare, but yours, I'm like, dude, I don't know how. I mean, without Jesus, I know it's impossible.
Yeah.
But do you think, your faith, but then also you said you went to some talk therapy or EMDR?
So forgiveness came before that, and I'll tell you why I started the trauma therapy and the EMDR. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about forgiveness, for me, when I had that encounter in a patrol car, I wanted to live in a way that was a proper response to what he had done for me. And forgiveness was an act of obedience to the Father that I took in a step of faith. Because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. And I couldn't see how I forgive or how I could forgive or how I would feel any different. But I did it as an act of obedience to him, truly down in the depths of my soul saying, I put them in your hands because I can't do this. Like I would be sitting in a jumpsuit for the rest of my life if I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put them in your hands because this is destroying me from the inside out. And when I said, I'm going to let you handle this, I'm going to put them in your hands. It's not, look, listen, forgiveness doesn't mean, hey, we're good. I condone what you did. It doesn't mean if you're in an abusive situation or have been in the past, it doesn't mean that you have to go and confront that person. You don't have to. Now, if you've got a brother that you've got a fence with, go and make that relationship right if you can. If you can. But if it's a situation of abuse, you don't have to put yourself in that situation. You can go to the Father and say, here is my hurt. Here is my rage. Here is my hate and my anger. I give it to you in exchange for what you have for me. And, but 2021, I was at home and I had been offered the book deal to write Unconquered and turned it down. And Amber came up to me, my wife came up to me, and she said, hey, I need you to do something for me, please. And I'm thinking, honey-do list. I forgot something. And she said, I need you to talk to somebody. About what? Like I tell guys all the time, get help if you need it. Like talk to somebody. If it's a pastor or a chaplain or a counselor, whatever, talk to somebody. And she was like, this whole I'm not good enough is wreaking havoc on your life and you can't even see it. And I didn't buck, like, at all. I called a buddy of mine. I'm like, hey, I need to talk to somebody and tell him what's going on. And he put me on the phone. Like, within a couple of hours, I was on a video chat with somebody going through this stuff and understanding that the source of all of that went back to my childhood. And I always tried to over-explain because I was seeking validation where I didn't get it as a child. Because it was always, that didn't happen. It wasn't that bad. You know what you were doing, so it wasn't abuse. And so I dealt with that the proper way. But forgiveness takes a little work, but you do it in faith. Like, I want them to pay. But forgiveness says, I'll let you decide that.
Yep. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
And when he does it right. Here's what I struggle with. Getting to heaven and seeing pedophiles standing around that he forgave and that he redeemed. But then if I choose not to forgive them, that makes me the judge. And that's not a power I want or can bear. I can't see how God could ever do that. But after all he's forgiven me of, who am I to push back? Because sin is sin. In our culture, we try to say, well, this is a sin, but it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's not as bad as this one.
It's not as bad as this one. But under his authority, sin is sin. It doesn't matter if it's cheating on your wife or a little white lie or whatever it is.
Or murder.
It's sin. It's all sin. His blood covers it all if you let him, if you ask him, if you seek that. And so it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you passive. He makes you unbeatable. And that's where you live a life of being more than a conqueror, is because of him. And so forgiveness was the first step in the journey of healing for me. And I would not be sitting here talking to you today, and I hope I made that clear, if it were not for Jesus.
For sure.
And, to be unconquered doesn't mean that you're not going to have some scars and some wounds along the way, some bumps and bruises. Doesn't even mean you're not going to fall in sin. It just means you get up and keep back going, and you surrender to Him every moment, every day.
And one thing, you were, and I'm just going to shoot it straight, you were sodomized, and people were like, no, that didn't happen. That, like, you just, and
Forced.
And they, 5, 6 years old.
Because I didn't talk about it until I was, for probably nearly 20 years, right at
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oof, I would have a list.
Yeah, I did.
Those people would almost be up there with
I've confronted
him.
several of those people. I'm not going to say who it is.
Sure.
Never will. But I've confronted several of those people, and I've got some emails from some of them who are still in ministry or whatever. And victim shaming, gaslighting, all the mental abuse continued. And so when I confronted them, there was really all I wanted was, I'm sorry that happened on my watch.
Yeah.
Acknowledge it. That's it. And I never got that. And so
not from anybody, huh? Mm-mm. That is insane.
The only person that I still have a relationship with, and you can do what you want, is I love my dad. But for the sake of my mental health, for my soul, I have a legal and spiritual and moral responsibility to protect my children. And I've been out of law enforcement since 2015, and I still have a pretty good sense when something ain't right. And when I confronted them, that was the response that pushed back. I said, farewell, and cut ties altogether.
With
them.
Mm-hmm. Your dad too? Mm-mm. Okay, so is your dad still?
Oh yeah, my dad's still. He's a rock star, man. He's a cowboy.
How did he do? Like, and I can only imagine if my son confessed to me like, hey, this has been going on, and then like your dad said, he was like probably ready to go, rip people's heads off, which I would have done the same thing. But I can only imagine like the struggle that he dealt with after that as well, with being like, I let you down, at least that's what I would think.
Dad has got my back, and he's had a lot of health issues in the past several years, but there is no doubt in my mind if he would have known about any of it, that it would have been dealt with swiftly. Mm-hmm. I became a cop because when I spent time with Dad, he had a lot of law enforcement friends, and I was always drawn to that. Like, they had good families, they're good men. I wanted to be like them. The work ethic of my dad and be a cop. Now, that's a different style than what you see in a lot of places with generations today. But my dad works, and he's in his 60s. And, I feel like that there probably was some, I'm sorry I let you down. But when I became a cop, he was able to go ride with me. Yeah. So he saw a different side of me. It was then that we started ending every conversation with, I love you. I love you. And he knows where I'm at. He supports me 1,000,000,000%. All he asks is, he said, when you tell people what happened to you, you make sure that they know it was not anybody in your family, especially me, because I would never do that. I would kill people for that. And there's some other stories there that I don't have liberty to share, but my dad is 100% on my side and has never done anything to hurt me, and I love him for that. And only regret I have is I don't get to spend more time with him than I do. But I'm sure that he dealt with some of that. But
he's doing good.
Oh yeah,
that's good to hear.
Yeah, he's squared up. Yeah, it's heavy. Some
Can't
of
even
it.
Imagine, Eddie, you come to me and said, "Hey, Ryan came to me and said something." I would think of Eddie.
You would know because the bodies would be strung up in here, slowly being bled out. Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, Eddie, you can't do anything. Let me.
Oh, that's what Dad said. He was like, if anybody hurts my grandkids, don't do anything. Call me first. Yeah. I've lived a good, long life. I'll handle it.
I'm ready to go out
He said, I'll handle it.
in a blaze of glory.
And I'll handle it. And, you know, you cannot compromise with the evil. You can't negotiate with evil.
No.
And I think a lot of us, in terms of what we tolerate within the four walls of our home, we slowly allow it to creep in. In our country today, it started off as like little trickles, and now it's just a massive tsunami of evil that you see all across our country in different ways. And it's become more and more obvious. But we try to coddle evil. And you will have the amount of peace in your home based on the amount of evil you're willing to negotiate with and coddle with. And eventually, if you continue to coddle it, you're going to be sleeping with it. It's going to be embedded in every facet of your life.
I was just having this conversation last night with my wife. We were, just BSing back and forth, and I was talking about the podcast we just did with Ethan, and he was in Mosul, Iraq, at the same time I was, and he was describing, some of the things he saw and how it was like traumatizing. And, I was like, dude, that was on a daily basis. I saw that for 6 months. I'm like, and there's like good and bad things that come from seeing that kind of stuff. But I was like, the one thing that I do know after seeing the things that I saw that is for good is I know pure evil does exist. Like, I've seen it, and I know that the good exists too. But I also know that pure evil, like you said, cannot be negotiated with. I think people nowadays, when you see evil happen, people want to like reason or put some like logic into it, like, well, maybe it was because of this and they did this because of that. It's like, no, they're done. Like, they should be exterminate that in any form or fashion that you can. Like, you should not be reasoning with it, because the second you reason with it, that's when it creeps in. And it's like, okay, now I have an avenue, because now you're letting me get away with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that comes in our lives through temptations and habits and disciplines or lack of, and excuses and victim mentality, because it leads us down a dark road quick, and it just opens a door. And unforgiveness opens a door for a lot of that to come in. And I can't tell you how to forgive. You have to make that decision on your own. But if you do, you're going to close the door to a lot of evil, because it brings in hate and rage and anger and violence that is not the way that he wants you to address certain things. Now, there's a time and a place for righteous, superior violence. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying don't fight if you're called to fight. If you have to fight, then do it, and do it well, and win. But when it comes to the stuff that we're talking, like in our country, in our homes, we need people in town square that are amplifying righteousness. Here's the thing. Everybody wants, well, not everybody, but a lot of people in our country want to redefine good and evil. The standard for good has always been and will always be holiness. You can't base it on anything of cultural ideology or political ideology. It is holiness. And the first thing that certain people in certain segments of our country want to do is eliminate Christianity, because it opens all the doors for all the other ways that are trying to creep into our country and that are already here. Yep. And we have to have men that are willing to take a stand. Women, too, take a stand. And a lot of women have to lead because their men aren't. And so they're doing dual roles. And if you can't lead, somebody else will. It's just a matter of time. And if you quit because you're not willing to lead, you're forfeiting all the progress, all the work, everything, and handing it over to somebody that's willing to fight. So get up and fight. Get up off of your ass and dust yourself off and fight back, because there is no more waiting around. Time is short. We don't have a lot of time left on the clock. Push back and fight. And that's one of the reasons I wrote Unconquered. I want people to get uncomfortable. We are so addicted to comfort in our society. We are so addicted to comfort as men. We seek out comfort instead of seeking discomfort, instead of trying to make ourselves uncomfortable. We want to lay in the bed until a late hour, We want to go to bed late because we're going to stay up and watch TV, eat comfort food. Comfort is reserved for the dying. I remember recently I was in a hospital room visiting somebody, and it was their last day. And on the board it says, goal for today, comfort. What do they give a prisoner before they execute them? Comfort food. What do they give somebody when they send them home from hospice? Make them comfortable. Comfort is reserved for the dying. So are you a man who is already submitted to dying? You're in your 30s, your 40s, 50s, whatever, and you've already said, like, I'm tapping out, I'm done, but you're still breathing. You're just waiting for your time up. Or are you going to get up and fight? You're not done yet. As long as you've got a pulse, as long as you've got breath in your lungs, live in a way that brings him glory. Because the way you've been doing it, if you've been passive and lazy and undisciplined, is not bringing him glory. So that's what it means to live unconquered, is to get up and fight back.
Come on.
My man.
My man.
Dude, that's awesome.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. We went a little long. Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, it's all good, man. Yo, it's been an honor having you on here, man. I'm so glad that you reached out, and I can't wait to delve into these books too, as well, because you should never stop striving to get better, be better.
Well, same way. I read a lot.
If guys want to get a hold of you, or they want to order the book just on Amazon?
Yeah, all the books are on Amazon. You can go to unconqueredbook.com, and that'll take you to my website. You want to learn more about what my nonprofit does, it's liveunconquered.org. Of course, that just launched here in the past 30 days, and it's a mission to help first responders win on the job and at home without burning everything down around them. And it's taking a very real message like this wherever we can go.
Awesome. Well, God bless you, man. Thank you for doing that.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Yep.
Awesome.
Out.